hope that you are as excited as I am to be here with these four monumental creatives that happen to be from Newark. And I want to give a shout out to Arts High School. Because out of four panelists, two are graduates of Newark Arts High School. So that's going to be a big hand. We first need to acknowledge the leadership of the Newark Public Library, Board of Trustees President Dr. Lauren Wells, Director Christian Zabriskie, and staff, particularly Dale Colston and Reggie. You know, it's not easy to produce this type of event that informs the community and probes the intellect of the community. There's a lot of pushback now, politically, and the fact that the people here at the Newark Public Library are willing to do what is more and more looked upon unfavorably is quite amazing. So we have to support them with our votes, with our political might, to make sure that they will continue, that they will be able to continue to offer this type of programming. I am personally honored to be the moderator of this program of people who I have known, most of whom I have known and admired for many, many years. Richard and his wife Val, who is just an incredible writer. Celeste, who has had so many creative walks and journeys, and now she's a filmmaker. And Nefertiti, who is my hangout, wonderful friend. And then Anthony, who I just met today, but I've seen his work. So I am personally delighted to be here. Historically, there's something quite special about the arts in Newark. We have examples of world-renowned artists across genres who've hailed from this great city. Sarah Vaughan, Wayne Shorter, Savion Lover, Willie Cole, and the amazing Amiri Baraka, who we'll get back to a little later. And they're just a handful of the scores who shared a little bit of Newark with the world. Because every time a Newark artist puts something out, people learn a little bit more about Newark, and they learn to respect us just a little more. My brother-in-law used to say that there was something special in the Newark border, and I think maybe he was right. So tonight we're going to spend some time with these incredible artists, and we're going to see if we can feel as spectacular at the end as that closing scene on Nefertiti's reel. Okay, so I'm going to start with, I think, what would be considered to be the beginning for some people when looking at Black arts, and it's with Amiri and Amiri Baraka. And we know that Amiri particularly started in Harlem, but a lot of his work was done over here. And I'm going to pose this to each of the panelists. Can you talk about your own experiences or potential influence from the Barakas in regard to your work in film and theater? And it's beautiful that we have an intergenerational panel, so we'll get responses from different perspectives. And Richard, we'll start with you.
1965, I was a student at Howard University in the drama department down there, and we did a production of Dutchman, and Amiri came down from New York to see it. This was about a year after Dutchman had premiered off-Broadway, and he came to the department because the chair of our department and my playwriting instructor, the chair of the department taught Amiri when he was a student at Howard in the 50s, and he also taught my teacher. And their classmate was Toni Morrison, She was in one of their writing classes. So when I met him for the first time, it was in that particular context. I think I was still a freshman, and I didn't even know that Amiri was from Newark. I didn't find out until that night when we met and everything. He said, "Oh, you're from Newark. I'm from Newark." Everything took off from there.
Well, amazing. And as an aside, if you have not read Richard's autobiography, Richard, what's the title?
It's Always Loud at the Balcony.
It is a fabulous look at Richard's life and art in Newark.
Yeah.
But thank you, Celeste.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. This right here is like a full circle moment for me. Because first of all, sitting next to this gentleman,
Yes.
who I have admired for, God, I won't even say how many years, but several decades, as well as his phenomenal wife, Valerie Wilson Wesley, who I got to work with, helping her to promote her books. And through the Newark Black Film Festival, when I really got to meet and work with Richard, Wesley, and Clement Price, and hopefully I'll be able to tell that story a little bit later. But back to Amiri Baraka, I met Amiri, the first time I met Amiri Baraka was when I was 14 years old. And we had the Summer Youth Employment Program here in Newark. And of course, Amiri was running the Committee for Unified Newark. And they got some funding to hire some high school students. And I luckily was one of those students. And it was probably the best work experience and the best life experience that I've ever had, particularly as a young person. Because our job, believe it or not, was to learn about our culture. And his followers were our instructors. And they taught us about Black history. They taught us Spanish. We took our classes right at Arts High School. They taught some of the students took martial arts. I did not. They taught us Swahili. But that was my initial entree to the world that is Amiri Baraka. Fast forward many years, when Newark, under Mayor Sharp James, wanted to hire someone to run cultural affairs for the city of Newark. I think you might have been on that committee, I'm not sure. Amiri was on that committee. Amiri fought hard for Sharp and the administration to establish a cultural affairs department that was a department. We still ain't got that. We're trying to get there, but we still don't have it. But anyway, long story short, I became the person to run cultural affairs for the city of Newark. So I interacted again with him there. Fast forward another 10 years when I started my own business, Celeste Bateman and Associates. I started a booking agency called the Newark, and he was my first client. He signed on immediately. And from then on, I handled all of his PR and all of his bookings. And to this day, excuse me, to this day, people contact me. Now, Amiri has been dead 10 years this year. People contact me from all corners of the world to get permission to use his works. They want to do Dutchman, they want to use his poems, they want to do this, that, one thing, and the other. And unfortunately, I have no purview over that, but he's still in my life every day. We went through some bad times, and we went through some good times. Fortunately, I got him when he was a milder, more amenable Amiri Baraka. And so, fortunately for me, our good times were, but it was still a stormy time because I got him right after Somebody Blew Up America happened, so. And at that time, people were like, they were,
Okay, so I want to read. So my father was in Mr. Baraka's organization committee for a unified Newark, and so my relationship sort of predates my birth. But I want to read this. There's a book called A Nation Within a Nation that a brother named Kamosi wrote about Imamo's sort of life and work. And he interviewed, my father was one of the people that he interviewed for the book. And there's this passage in it that I really love. It's my father talking about the first time he went to a soul session. And the soul sessions were, these events where there was like poetry and music and speeches. And prior to coming to this soul session, my father wasn't in the movement. He was fresh out of the military, had just gotten to Newark. So he literally changed his life. And so this is my dad. And Nguvu recalls the impact of the first speech he heard by Imam Baraka at the soul session, one emphasizing the need for members with the new value system. Imam Baraka made a speech, I will never forget it. It was dealing with morality, like cleaning up your lifestyle, drinking and smoking, and all this type of stuff. The new man, an alternative value system. The speech was so strong and so convincing that I remember when I walked out from the soul session, because I was smoking cigarettes at that time, I remember that I got a block away from the place, I threw my cigarettes away, I never smoked a day since. That was the impact it had on me. And so I feel like that's kind of my origin story. Like the name Nguvu was given to my father by Imamu. It was like, it was at the time when people were denouncing their slave names and choosing names that had to do with the continent. So it's a Swahili name that means strength. And so that is the climate in which I was born, that was like probably the first artist, who ever influenced me. And I, as a young person, I spent a lot of time in that basement at, the blues people, Kimako's blues people, all those sessions.
Right.
I saw so many amazing poets and artists perform there. And so I feel like beyond just him having an influence on me as an artist, I feel like ideologically, in terms of, an idea about what an artist should be and how an artist should function in the world, my ideas about that were formed very early on because of those relationships and because of like what culture can do, like literally change people's lives. And so that's why I feel like I take it so seriously, what I do, because I feel like it's such a privilege to be able to do this work. I think that white supremacy has never had a greater tool of propaganda than film and television. And so I feel like as a director, as a Black woman, it is my job to be an agent of change. And that's why I tell the stories that I tell, so that is the influence that Mr. B had on me.
That's amazing.
I just really just appreciate being up here with everyone and learning everyone's connection to Amiri, because my connection is always growing. Amiri Baraka's work, obviously The Dutchman and the Slave, reading his plays as an artist myself, kind of just pride myself on just digging and really learning my history. And Amiri Baraka is someone who is just a central figure in my research and my work. For one, doing some of August Wilson's work, I find that he always says that his work was inspired by Amiri Baraka. So me being a young Black artist, I have to know who Amiri Baraka is in order to tap into August Wilson. So I just go and study Amiri Baraka. I read the Blues People. I realized he's that guy, you know, Black Arts Movement. Me growing up in Roxbury and migrating over here to Newark and being in Newark and knowing that Amiri Baraka had a presence in Newark, I just feel like the more I know of myself, the more I grow as an artist, the more I grow as a Black artist. I feel like I'm connecting more to his work, and not just as an actor, but as a playwright as well, which is why I really admire Richard Wesley's work and reading his work. Is because, you know, it's not just enough to be an actor or artist. You have to really move the needle and do your work as a leader and change agent, like you were saying. So it's always grown with me. That's why I love being in this space, because when I come here, I feel like I could do my best work because I'm surrounded by so many great artists hanging around me. And so Amiri Baraka is the spirit of the man. I'm still becoming a man, so I try to put myself in that spirit so I can do half of what they've done, you know, in this generation. So I'm just happy to be here and be in that spirit with you all.
And Anthony, you say that you moved here from Roxbury.
Mm-hmm.
So contrast and compare Roxbury, Newark.
I don't see a big difference. I mean, I know there's a big difference in terms of the history, but Roxbury has a lot of history in itself. And I'm very proud, you know, of Roxbury. The more I learned that a lot of artists, you know, grew up in Roxbury or they ventured to Roxbury at some point. So it just sparks my mind. I just love history. I love learning as an artist. And Newark just has that same energy and vibe, which is why I'm like, this is probably why I'm here. You know, I didn't plan on being here, you know, coming to New York City first. I didn't plan on being in Newark, but there's something about Newark. I don't know if it's in the water. I don't know if it's, I don't know what it is, but I feel like I've been more creative as a writer and actor since I've been here. I don't know what that's about, but I'm real grateful for it. And there's a lot of similarities to Roxbury, the streets, the history, the Black pride, the culture, all that's in there, and I'm vibing with it. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Richard, what are some changes you can speak to for Black creatives in film and theater from the 1970s up to current day? What has progressed, and what limitations might there still be?
I think progress lies in the numbers. The numbers of Black creatives who are working in the highest levels of the industry, as well as the expanding numbers of people, you know, right in the grassroots. I think another thing that is different is the level of agency that Black artists in general have, as opposed to, you know, back when I was starting. In my time, we were always dependent in many ways, whether it was starting a theater company or trying to make a movie, or trying to get published. We were always looking for external resources, access to capital. Those are always conversations that were being had. What I see with young people today is they can take this and make a movie.
That's right.
They can take this and gain access to almost all of the information that's available in the world. And because of that, because of the instantaneous access to the ability to make a film and to the ability to communicate with each other across vast distances, they have created for themselves avenues through which they can disseminate their work instantly. And they also have, either directly or indirectly, the ability to make or break businesses in a way that we, in my time, only thought about. We knew what the implications were, but we didn't quite know exactly how that was going to happen, or if it did, it would take longer. What I'm talking about is, for instance, my grandson. He's 16 going on 17. He hasn't watched programmed television in close to 10 years. All of his media watching is through YouTube and some of these other outlets where people in his generational cohort are making their own programming and exchanging information and ideas with each other. And, you know, so much so that only time he watches the NBA is playoffs. The only time he watches NFL is playoffs. The only time he watches, the news, if he ever watches it. When he's going to watch it, it's news that's being programmed by people in his cohort who are disseminating information that they got from elsewhere. And they're telling him, and so he knows about books and new ideas and everything through these new venues that have been created by people who I don't even know about. But kids on his level, they know all about them. And that's something very, very new. The only analog that I can even remotely think about was back in our time, going to some of those little places and like 4 or 5 of us get together and record a doo-wop record and sell it out. That would be it. But now the trunk of the car has turned into this. So that's a big difference. Now the question is, what do you do with this immense power that you have in your hand? And how do you shape that to be a positive instrument for change going forward?
That's right. You know, I had to reflect. I have an 8-year-old grandson, and his parents found out by chance that he has his own YouTube channel.
I think that's what happened.
Or he used to have it. So it's really a different time. Celeste, Newark is such a rich city for underappreciated cultural figures. Was there ever a singular focus in mind at the initial process that led to Gone Too Soon? Or was the plan always to spotlight a number of figures within one documentary? Or did it just keep growing?
Oh, you know, Gone Too Soon, which is a documentary that I did that premiered in 2021. The life, legacy, and loss of Newark's cultural icons. It came about, interestingly, from a social media post. Because, as I mentioned before, Amiri died in 2014. January 2014. But then Dr. Clement Price, and probably half of y'all, at least in this audience, know, I think Dr. Price went right after Amiri, and then it was, maybe I don't have the right order, but it was Rodney Gilbert, and had been Halim Suleiman, and had this person and that person, and of course, Brea Blackberry Molasses, who was working with me and my women's performance ensemble. And it just all started happening like this. And I wrote a post about it. And so many people chimed in on it. Yeah, what about that person and that person? And these were all iconic artists from our community.
Within a 3-year period.
Yeah, the 3-year period was really off the chain, but the documentary actually covers a 15-year period, starting with, I think Halim was the earliest. And then Kabu Okadevis, if you all are familiar with African Globe Theater, I mean, he wasn't in this country, but he was in another country, and he died, and it was more than I could take. And I said, how can we memorialize? And filmmaking was really not, I was involved with Pamela Morgan and her Women in Media in Newark at the time, but.
And still are.
And I still am. But, me as a filmmaker, and I actually call myself a documentarian because I don't dare. Sometimes I'm like, how dare you try to be a filmmaker? When you got people like Sister Nguvu here and stuff like that, and Brother Wesley. But I just wanted to memorialize these Newarkers and to make sure. And then we had this whole influx of new artists. The new Anthony Goss and the new, all these other visual artists have just fallen out of the sky in Newark. And another thing that happened was Raz Baraka's transition team. Mm-hmm. I was on his transition team. It was chaired by John Schreiber, it's NJ Pack, and Gloria Buck. And there was we would get together, regular meetings around this humongous round table of art leaders in Newark, head of the symphony, head of the museum, head of the library, boom, boom, boom. And I saw history being rewritten right in front of my eyes. And people were saying stuff that wasn't true. And, and it was this group of people who were thought they came, when they got to Newark, that's when we got cultured. And I was like, wait a minute now, hold the phone. And so, and I'm not gonna name any names, but, somebody in the context of all of this that was going on said something, within that time period, said something about Newark had never had a jazz festival before. I was like, what? Wait a minute. What was I doing for 9 years back in the 90s? From 1991 when we started with the Sarah Vaughan Jazz Festival, however many years, I think we ended in 1997. And bringing all these fabulous jazz artists to Newark. How did all that happen if we never had a jazz festival? And so this kept happening around this round table. And so all of that converged. And then, my experiences with women in media in Newark and so on and so forth. And again, like I said, those artists who passed away. And I just had to do something. So I already had a communications background, my undergrad, and I have a graduate degree from Montclair State University in communication arts. So I just kind of pulled all that stuff together, and I said, we're gonna make a film. And we made a film. And so it was always, to answer your question more specifically, it always was more than one person. In fact, there was another woman that was supposed to be featured in that film. But it's a long story. Her family didn't want her in the film. So that's how we ended, because a lot of people ask me, well, how come you only got one woman in a film? Well, this is what happened. And men do tend to die earlier than we do too, so that's a whole nother story. But
eating that pork.
So to answer your question, that's how it all came. All of those things kind of converged, and it is so important. At the other session that y'all had the other day, they talked about memory and legacy. The other Black History Month session, Linda. And memory and legacy are so important. It's so important to document your own history, your own legacy, because, and we see it happening now, people will rewrite your history.
Yeah.
So we got to do it ourselves.
You're right. You're right.
Whatever medium.
And speaking about our history in Newark, can we talk about African Globe Theater and Theater of Universal Image and the impact? I'm sorry. I'm asking if we can talk about the African Globe Theater and Theater of Universal Image, because those were two theater companies right here in the city of Newark that had a major impact on people in this area and beyond. So I don't know if anyone from the panel would want to address that.
Well, TUI, Theater of Universal Images, I first became,
That's not me.
I first became aware of TUI when Clarence Ali and I think it was Clarence Lilly then.
That's Clarence on the screen there, sitting down.
There's a picture up.
Yeah, see right there. See the front, straight ahead. Richard,
Oh,
straight ahead.
Oh yeah, that's him sitting down, gesturing with his hair in the white shirt, right near the center of the photo. They did a play of mine, and I had not known since I was experiencing my career mostly out of town and away from Newark. I hadn't known about TUI until Clarence called me, and he was based in Newark Symphony Hall at the time, in the space that I always knew as the former television studio where Uncle Fred used to do, and Jocko did the dance show. You know, they were in that space. You see all these old school Newarkers, and they know what I'm talking about. Okay, you know. So that was the first thing. You know, that was one of the first things that like really impressed me. He was in that space in Symphony Hall. He was determined to hopefully expand while he was there. He was bringing together these really very talented young artists, actors, directors, designers, lighting designers, costume designers. Everything was in-house. And Clarence had found ways to get training for them. And he was really, really, really interested in developing a professional repertory company. And at that time, this was, it feels like it was the late 70s, I think, mid-70s, 74, 75, 76. TUI was probably the largest and most stabilized black theater company in New Jersey. And I remember especially meeting a really exciting playwright through TUI. Someone who I have now known for 50 years and have watched him expand way beyond theater into publishing, and that's Wade Hudson, who, along with his wife Cheryl, founded the Afrobets, not the company, but Afrobets is one of the products of their publishing company and everything. And I first met Wade through Clarence, through TUI. Kabu, I met through Clarence. Kabu was a student at Rutgers University in the Mason Gross School. And he was attracted to Newark for a lot of the same reasons that some of those artists you mentioned before were attracted. This city lends itself to artistic expression. People don't think that because when they think of Newark, you're thinking of the rebellion in '67, or you're thinking of factories. but Newark has always been a great incubator of artistic expression. And Kabu studied, he discovered that when he started coming into Newark, he and Marvin Jefferson and Marvin's wife, and they, out of that, they began working toward the beginning of African Globe Theater. And they actually supplanted TUI when TUI broke up and dissipated and everything. It was African Globe that stepped into that space. And African Globe was the anchor in North Jersey, while Crossroads Theater was in Central and South Jersey as centers of theatrical activity.
I just want to say one thing about Clarence Lilly, because a lot of people may not know this either, that Clarence Lilly, well, he is now Clarence Ali, Barry Washington.
Barry, who's out in Oakland, California.
Is in Oakland, and Tom Guy, that they founded our first cable company here in Newark. I think it was called Connection Cable. A lot of people don't know that we have cable in Newark because these three, I think there was another brother, I'm missing
Al Bundy.
Al Bundy? Okay.
Al Bundy.
Okay.
Yeah.
That these four brothers got together and decided that Newark should come into the, at the time, 20th century, and that we should have cable TV as well. And they created and developed, and however it's done, they got it done. And they ended up with Newark and South Orange.
Yes.
Yes. And they became very wealthy, and rightfully so. But I think it just needs to be noted.
You're right.
That those brothers brought in.
It does need to be. Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the importance of both those institutions, Theater for Universal Images and African Globe, their historical importance across the 70s, 80s, and 90s was that they were a place that young artists could come to and gain the training and experience that was needed to run theaters, manage theaters, and which I think is really important. Having a cohort of people who know how to manage a business. That's what it takes when you're in charge of the box office, when you're in charge of procurement of costumes and lighting equipment and everything, all the other ancillaries that go with running a theater company. You have to. You're watching over the budget. You're in charge. You're learning how to be an accountant. You're learning how to balance a budget. Those are responsibilities that translate into other areas. And so Clarence and Kabu were very instrumental in developing people who could operate backstage. Not just what was happening on the stage, the acting, and even the writing or the directing. That's sort of like, to borrow a phrase from cinema, that's in front of the camera.
Yes.
It's what goes on behind the camera, because that's where the real power is. And for Kabu and Clarence to accomplish what they accomplished against some very, very difficult headwinds, they should always be remembered.
Thank you. Thank you. But that makes us think about Lionsgate coming to Newark now. And what are the opportunities?
Well,
Anthony.
I think you should go.
The next generation.
I mean, I think ideally it would be great if they could set up training programs for citizens, because I feel like there are so many different roles in that it takes to make a film or television series. You know what I mean? It's like grips, gaffers, and these are all very highly skilled, well-paid, union trades, and I feel like it would be wonderful if there was some type of program that was going to be set up that would train local youth, because it's one thing to be a director, but there are hundreds of other positions in film and television that need to be filled. And, often, these unions are, I feel like now I see more Black and brown faces on set, but, not as many as there need to be, Sometimes I work on a show and it's like me and maybe a PA or two, or maybe the hair department, you know what I mean? But, there still needs to be a lot more Black cinematographers, gaffers, grips, production designers, and these are really well-paid jobs, and it takes a certain skill level. And the thing about it is, like, they need training, and so ideally, to me, that should be a part of the conversation.
That's such an excellent point.
It is an excellent point.
Mm-hmm.
No, you want to end?
Oh no, I have nothing to add. I think that's critical if they're going to be setting up shop in Newark. I think there has to be some type of community aspect to anything you do if you're going to do business in the city. But I think it should create a lot of opportunities on top of the training, like behind the camera. Like you guys were saying, that's where the real power is. And sometimes you show up to sets or anywhere, and a lot of times you can be the talent, but a lot of the things that go behind the scenes is like, it's not you, it's not people that look like you. So I think training and developing people for those positions are critical. And just Newark has so many great artists. I think a lot of opportunities for directors, writers, actors. It would be nice to showcase all that talent and create jobs for people.
There's opportunity.
Yeah.
Well, I think the land has been cleared, right?
Yes.
The land has been cleared, right? Because it seemed to me last time, there was some time, it was several months ago, I was driving down Elizabeth Avenue, and I looked over where I used to see Dayton Street homes, and it was like, wow, I can see all the way up to Elizabeth Avenue. Whoa, okay. But has there been has anybody seen any, like, foundations, like poles and things going up?
Not yet. I haven't seen anything yet. I'm over in the South Ward. I haven't seen anything yet.
Okay.
But I was just going to say that representation matters, and we've heard that 1,000 times. But as Nefertiti was saying, there are so many roles besides on stage and behind, and behind the camera for us in those skilled positions. Because City Hall is a beautiful building, as are our old county buildings. And so there was a lot of filmmaking going on there. There were so many commercials being shot there. And I would say to the powers that be at the city, and nobody seemed to care about it other than me, but I would say to them, and just be annoying because I do that so well, I'm not gonna let another film crew come in here that doesn't have Black and brown people employed. And they would tell me, well, they're not trained in those positions. And it's a how do you say it? It's I can't think of that phrase, but it's a catch-22. So you can't get trained in the positions because you can't get the roles or the jobs, and you can't get the jobs because you're not trained in them. And that's their excuse for keeping, Black and brown folks out of those positions. So therein lies the rub. So all I can say is just be prepared. Preparation meets opportunity, and just be ready. I would say this to our young people. Just be ready to stop, and so that there is no excuse why you cannot be hired in those positions. And with a situation like Lionsgate coming, as a community and as an arts community, we got to demand that there are training positions. We have a film and television commission here. Their office is in Newark, New Jersey. look at the board members on that commission and all the filming that is being done in Newark. But look at the board members. They don't look like you, they don't look like me. And these are the people.
And that's the state of New Jersey's Film Commission.
Yes, New Jersey Film and Television Commission, whatever.
I may have to come a little bit closer to naming names.
He's got more clout than I got.
Yeah, I'll have to come just a little bit closer to naming some names, but not too much closer because I can't remember some of the names. But I do remember dates and time and places. When Reggie was running some of the clips, and they ran a series of posters from different plays and productions that I was involved in. I think one of them may have been for a film that I wrote the script for called Fast Forward.
There it is.
Yeah, that's that. That was shot in New York, in Manhattan, and so all I had to do was just go right across the river and hang around on the set while they were shooting some of it. And one day, while I was there, this is to the point that you were just making, okay? The cinematographer, who, if you look real closely, you'll see director of photography, and that guy was setting up one of the dance sequences. And one of the rules that the union has is who can be on the set, who can actually be handling the camera. There are hard and fast rules about that. And membership in the union is one of the things that's required. And so while he's setting up the camera, there is his son next to him, who was all of 18 or 19 years of age at the time. And he's telling his son everything. And then he lets his son sit in the chair and look through the viewfinder and, arrange the shot. Then he assigned his son to go out and do some of the jobs that some of the other crew were supposed to be doing. Where there should have been a stand-in, there was this boy. And he's looking at him, setting the lens and everything. And I was saying, Sydney, is letting this go on? That was the Sydney Portier I'm talking about. I said, I just named her name.
Sydney. Oh, Sydney.
But it was accepted. It was accepted. This is, hey, if you're the cinematographer, if you're the sound engineer, if you're the costume designer, the production manager, and you want your kid to be on the set, this kid can come on the set and stand right there, and they can do all these non-union jobs and everything. No one's going to say a single word. But the problem comes when you realize that there are thousands of kids who could be doing exactly the same thing, who are studying on college campuses, or who are members of TUI or African Globe Theater. They don't get that access. They don't get that chance. Or if they do show up at a Lionsgate under construction or after construction, and they want to stand on a sound stage, and they want to look through through a lens, or they want to handle some sound equipment, they're not going to be allowed to do that. It's that gatekeeping and, nepotism, basically. You know, all these things are the kinds of barriers that have to be overcome, moving forward. I agree. I think very much so that if Lionsgate's going to come to Newark, I hope very, very much that they have some kind of a training program there, for the kids who are at Arts High School,
Absolutely.
for the kids over here just across the city line at Cicely Tyson, for the students who are at the other arts related high school here inside Newark, because there are kids in all three of those institutions, and who knows how many else in the other public schools, but certainly in those three institutions, there are students right now who are studying filmmaking and sound, and who are making films, making their own videos. They are the ones, among so many others in so many different parts of this country, who need that same kind of access that cinematographer gave to his son, knowing full well his son had no business doing any of that.
Thank you, Richard. So we're going to have a lightning round because we want to have time for Q&A. And the lightning round is I'm going to pose a question, and each of you is going to do a tweet. It's like 240 characters.
Yeah. Okay.
Like,
A tweet?
like I don't.
Sorry,
240 characters.
Short.
Oh,
Yes. Okay.
That's a metaphor. See, that's what okay.
Okay, because we want to have time for Q&A, but the last question. One inspiration for our theme this year is we wanted to highlight African-American artists who uplift the work or the lives of other African-American artists or stories using through their work. For example, the Bomb Squad and Public Enemy introduced a nation of hip-hop listeners to Malcolm X. So, are there any stories you feel you have succeeded in telling or highlighting? And what are some passion projects or stories that you hope to bring to light? And we'll start with Anthony.
Start with me?
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay,
Which
so,
part?
okay, stories you want to bring to light.
Phew. Man, there's a lot of stories I would love to see. Biopics, history, Harlem stories, Newark stories. A lot of hip hop artists that I think I would love to see films on that are actually good. I think one of my favorite films is He Got Game. I just love that particular film, how it was shot, and I think some stories I would like to see is similar genre stories, more African American or brown stories that are in crime, like detective stories or suspense or thrillers. I love that genre, like the what's that show that we had seen with the black girl, the other black girl, like shows like that. That show was really, really good, and I enjoyed that show. So shows like that are shows that I really like. I love that genre.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Nefertiti.
That show hasn't been renewed, which is so disappointing because it was like it's still sort of in limbo, and it's disappointing because it was like a show that they made for like literally no money, and it was a really big hit. It found its audience, and we're still waiting to see what's going to happen with it. I feel like it's like the Black Lives Matter bubble has burst in Hollywood, and we're sort of at the end of that, and the pendulum has swung in the other direction. We see like all these shows getting canceled or not renewed, and another show, the crossover that I worked on, that was based on a best-selling book, won an Emmy, and it's not getting picked up by Disney. That's the one that Felicia Rashad was in. So it's just like, it's wild out here. But stories that I want to tell, there's an original feature that I'm sort of trying to get off the ground now. That's a story that I wrote, but there's a Miles Davis story that I want to tell. It's about a very particular time in Mr. Davis's life that I feel like I can't believe no one's made a film about this already, and it involves some other jazz musicians that I've also been obsessed with. So that's a story I want to tell, and there's also a Baldwin book that I would love to make into a film at a certain point too. But I'm also beyond that. I really like telling intimate stories. You know, I feel like oftentimes in order to get a film made, it has to be a very, tell some historical or some important story. But I just, I love like cinema like Ingmar Bergman, and I love telling intimate stories, and I feel like empathy is always, sort of like a point of entry for me into other stories. And so I just hope to continue to make stories that point a lens at folks that look like me, and to bring those lives to other people in the world. Like I said earlier, I'm going way over the Twitter limit. But it's like literally the first blockbuster film in this country was Birth of a Nation, which is literally Ku Klux Klan propaganda, you know what I mean? And like that is the foundation of this industry. And so I feel like for me, like that's what's in the rearview mirror, and I feel like, it's the job of artists who are like-minded to bring some sensitivity, to bring to shed a light on our communities. And so I think it's a great responsibility, so I just hope to continue to be able to do that.
Thank you. Celeste.
Well, this one story that I'm glad that got told was the Bayard Rustin film, the Bayard Rustin story, because that story was one that has languished for decades and fortunately made into a beautiful, beautiful product. So, but the story that I'm telling now is about Winona Littman, who was a state senator, first African American woman state senator, who fought for the underserved, the disenfranchised, the ignored women, battered women, and abused children. And we are telling this story. We're in post-production of our documentary. It's called Stronger Than Steel, because they called her the Steel Magnolia, but it's called Stronger Than Steel, the Senator Winona Littman's story. And it was something else that I specifically wanted to say about. Oh, I know what I was going to say is that, one on the surface might think that it's a political story, but we are using the arts to tell this story. So we have an exhibit up at the New Jersey Historical Society, and it will be up probably through June, and we'll be premiering that film at the New Jersey Performing Arts Center on June 22nd. We've changed the date a couple of times, but that is the date, June 22nd. And everybody in here is invited. And while I have the microphone, I just want to say one more thing. Like, if you don't know about A. Kabu Okai Davies and some of the other people that I mentioned, you know about Jerry Gant and Rodney Gilbert and stuff. Our first documentary, Gone Too Soon, is now available on YouTube. So please watch it, comment, share, get everybody and your brother to watch it. I think you will love it. Thank you so much, they put the graphic up. Thank you.
And Richard.
On my bucket list is to write a 12-part series for television on the life and times of Frederick Douglass.
With thanks to our panelists and to you for your patience, it's now time for Q&A. So Reggie has the mic, and raise your hands, please.
Thank y'all so much for sharing and taking us on the time trip. As an artist, and in these trying times, y'all see my favorite clock.
Yes.
I heard you say that the artist is not supposed to become the politician, but we're supposed to be able to tell the truth of times. And I see y'all up there, and I hear the hurt or the grief of every one of our movements had cracks where we didn't speak on something we felt like we should have spoken on. Like that 18-year-old that was sitting behind the camera, he shouldn't be sitting, and somebody should have checked him. How important is it to check the current status quo of the red media in these times of a downfall with imperialism and capitalism, to be able to toe the line of artists and not politics?
Okay, let's take 3 questions and then we'll. 3 questions? Yeah, okay, yeah. Thank you for that question.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for Ms. Morgan for hosting this panel. Thank everyone for being here. This is absolutely fantastic, and I just wanted to show my appreciation for that before asking my question. First part is just a quick comment on the Liongate situation. There was one thing I thought of as well. If Liongate is getting a tax break from either the state of New Jersey or the city of Newark, then we need to make sure that they have some sort of program for our young people.
Absolutely.
That's what I was thinking of as far as like what incentivize them other than location or being a great city and all these other attributes of Newark is to ensure that we're getting the best thing out of it. The second thing is I wanted to touch on what Nefertiti had talked about the George Floyd bubble burst, right? Because I think that's exactly the moment that we're in right now. Basically, it's basically a backlash of what happened a couple years ago. It's fairly clear. The Supreme Court did recently with diversity, what's happening in libraries, it's all across the board, right? It's not the first time we've seen this in American history. We've seen this with the backlash from Reconstruction. But my question is, what are some tangible things as artists, activist artists, that people can do to know the moment that we're in and to try to address it? Because as those gatekeepers are, it's really hard when they decide to close the gate. And so I'm just really interested in some tangible things that you think could be done given the moment that we're in. Thank you.
Thank you, and one more. Sister.
Peace and blessings. Thank you so much for everything that you have said today, for your contributions to the arts of who we are, and for continuing your work. 10 years ago, I was in a meeting where a bunch of us who were the underground artists were called together because of the concern for the changing tone in the city. And I was so surprised to walk in and see that the very people that we were concerned about sitting up in the meeting, as everybody else was shocked too, tried to have a discussion about how we needed to stay together to protect the integrity of the voice of the Black and brown artists, and were immediately shot down by the people who were not supposed to be there and saying, there is no Black and brown voice of the Black and brown artist. There is only the voice of the artist. And in addition to that, trying to warn those who were younger and coming up to not fall for the okie doke, to not fall for the crumbs that will be thrown at you while they amass millions, and for us to stick together as a community, and warning that the integrity of our voice and the purity of it would start to be whitewashed. Over these last 10 years, we've seen a lot of what we were afraid of actually come to fruition. What are your thoughts, especially because with the program that we had last time about Jerry Mann, and so many of us who are the old heads have been talking about how things have definitely changed since Jerry transitioned because of what he represented those of us who are still trying to hold on. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are regarding that.
Thank you. So we have 3 questions, and I'll open the floor to the panelists.
They're all kind of interrelated, actually, about what we can do as a community. And the thing is, and this is what I found back in the 90s, working with the arts community, is that artists tend to work in silos. They tend to do their individual thing, especially visual artists. But we can't do that. We have to stick together and be vocal and verbal. We have to do all the things that we may not feel like doing, like writing our politicians and complaining and coming to council meetings. I'm not big on coming to council meetings either, but I will write a council person in a minute. I will write all 9 of them. And I have. They probably think I'm crazy. I sent them a 10-part plan one time to how to fix Newark. This is many years ago. The only one that responded was Mildred Crump, but that's a whole other story. But we have got to stick together, but we got to be verbal and we got to be organized. Yes. And we got to make a stake. And if we want a training program when Lionsgate comes, we got to let them know now.
Absolutely.
This is what y'all need. This is what we want. Every single one of us in here need to be right in that council, because as you said, you better believe they get public dollars. I don't necessarily know that for a fact, but I believe it deep in my soul that they will be getting public dollars. I don't want to dominate this, but I would just say this, that funding is that's another form of racism. How things get funded, when you were talking about Crossroads and TUI, and why our theater companies fail and stuff like that. And I remember all the way back when Crossroads was in the headlines, and I kind of digress, but it's all tied together, because they were in the red, and they were dragging Crossroads. You have to make it short. Is that what you're saying? Okay. They were dragging Crossroads through the mud. But see, what people don't know is some of the other organizations, they get direct funding right from the government. They didn't have to go through the State Arts Council and things like that. You know what I'm saying? So funding is just another way of...
Thank you, Celeste. And
sorry.
Thank you, Anthony, Nefertiti, Celeste, and Richard for being here tonight. What an illuminating conversation. And let's give you